What's happening, everyone? And welcome to Al Chile Boxing Talk. Hey, we're glad that you're all here, and we got the homies with me. George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA is here. The hired gun of Al Chile is here with us, Run PMC, and Nopal Boxeanos, the homie, man. We're glad you guys are here, and we have all kinds of boxing to talk about. So welcome in. And Georgie, dude, you were at the fight, man. We're going to talk about Estrada versus Chocolatito here in just a little bit. But
Okay.
you were there, bro, in person. I'd love for you just to talk about your experience, man. Like, how was the environment, bro? Like, tell us everything. Like, what were your impressions of attending this ending of a legendary trilogy?
Well, good morning, guys. I mean, hey, storm, yes, exactly that. That night, Saturday started off just raining all day. So, I mean, it was perfect. It rained here, rained in Phoenix. I know we're like about a little over 100 miles away from each other. It's pretty much the same damn weather. It was rainy over there. We got a little bit of a late start. We had wanted to get there, have a lunch an hour before the very first fight. It didn't turn out that way. You know how that shit goes. You know, never goes to plan. But either way, we got there right at the start of the Emma Williams fight. We sat down. I mean, the atmosphere was cool. This was actually the Phoenix Coyotes old arena. So it was the hockey arena that at the Desert Diamond Casino, with a casino here locally here in in southern Arizona. I guess they purchased it. I don't know where the Coyotes are playing at anymore, but I was pretty familiar with it. I've been to a couple hockey games, and it is pretty much set up that way too. It's stadium seats, the floor being the main attraction, and the crowd didn't start getting. You didn't start getting the crowd until right around the co-main event, which is typical. Even when you watch on TV, it's pretty much the same thing you see. The undercards, they have some good undercards, no crowd. But here on this one, the first fight we got to see was the Emma Williams. I mean, and you can tell who like hardcore boxing fans are, or who casuals are, or who are people that know who Chocolatito are and know Estrada, because Estrada is from Sonora. So when you have a Sonora fighter, especially from Southern Arizona, I mean, it was pro Mexican. I'm telling you, once that main event started. But again, you can tell who the casuals and who the hardcore boxing fans were. Me, my uncle, my cousins, we sat down, watched the fight. We didn't see no issue really with that fight. I mean, it was a little bit slow, but you can hear the guys in the crowds heckling, talking shit. But I mean, we're there enjoying the experience because, yeah, I would say this is probably one of those top trilogy. It was one of those top trilogies that we can go back and say that was made in history. I'm not saying it was the best trilogy, but it's definitely one of the best out there. Say maybe top 10 if there's that many trilogies out there in the boxing history. But it was a good trilogy. Um, and then like I said, right around the Cesar Martinez fight is when you can see the crowd get in. People buying their Estrada headbands. So you see a sea of red headbands. I don't know if you guys seen it on TV, but they were rolling deep. Um, and that fight it was I think honestly that fight. I mean, I don't know if it's a Spanish fighters or this is how Spanish fighters fight, but I mean, this is kind of the right up the alley of with Sandor Martin too. Not really trying to engage. Trying to box circles, but it also falls on Cesar Martinez not cutting the ring off, expecting that he was going to go into this fight with Carmena and just exchange punches, and that's not the game plan for Carmena. Carmena was in there to try to win on points, but it was an ugly fight. But the experience was cool, man. I mean, there was um it was there were some stars out there. I took a picture with Miguel Burchelt Alacran. I took a picture with Keenan Carbajal. That's Carbajal's nephew. He's a fighter from Phoenix. He's fought in a couple times on the PBC card. He actually fought Leo Santa Cruz. I in the Barrios versus Keith Thurman undercard. And also took a picture with Kenny Bayless. But that's just a few of the names that were there. Um, there was Donaire was also there. He was in the ring. Yeah, that's true. I did see that, Remy. You're right. He was there. I didn't see Rachel, but I definitely saw Donaire. He was there at the very end. Um, the women were deep. Sulem Urbinos from Phoenix. You had Estrada. You had Meyer. And these girls, I think they usually roll together. I'm pretty sure we've seen pictures of them on Instagram where they're together, especially in the Katie Taylor and Mayer fight. They were all together in New York. No, it's Katie Taylor and Sedano. I'm sorry. They were all together, and they were there together as well in the crowd. You had Bam Rodriguez, Josh Franco, Benavides Senior was there. I didn't see Benavides Junior and Chicano. We like to mention hot women from Twitter. Go ahead and take a look at Jose Benavides Senior's wife. Me and my cousin and my uncle had an inside joke. We're like, that's no way. That's not David Benavides' mom. So we had our
Oh
little inside joke
man.
there, going back and forth with each other. But it was a great experience. Main event, my phone fucking died at the moment of Chocolatito coming out. My phone died. And I guess what happened is I had my camera light on because I had dropped my keys there and I forgot to turn my camera light off. Felt my pocket hot and I'm like, oh fuck, and I see that I'm pretty low on the battery, so I didn't get a chance to get the Estrada walkout. Man, you should have seen how, I'm sure you guys seen it on TV, but to be there, pro Mexican, like the crowd was going crazy. It was pretty full. I could probably say there was maybe 10 seats, if that were not filled in. Maybe those are people that didn't show up to the fight, but I would say this had to been sold out. Eddie Hearn was in the crowd, of course, there too. Good experience, man. All I can say is if you guys ever get a chance to go catch a fight, no matter where it is, anywhere in your city, near your city, like, take that drive, get that experience. And for me, I knew we were going to see some stars out there because of who the main event was, Estrada and Chocolatito. And what was cool is the people on the floor seats, they got to interact with the fighters that were there. So Meyer was walking around taking pictures with people. Estrada did the same thing. Diego Pacheco, young up and coming, 21-year-old under the Benavides camp, same thing. He was there interacting with people. And the boxing guys, they're pretty regular people, just like how we are. The only difference is they get punched in the face for a living, and we don't. We got to sit here behind the screen and give our opinion, our facts, how we feel about boxing. But I enjoyed it. My uncle enjoyed the hell out of it too. And I'm looking forward. Hopefully, I'm sure this will be another good turnout. Maybe we'll get another fight here in Phoenix, or maybe I could run into you guys somewhere, maybe in California or even Vegas, man. We should make it a trip one day, man, when one of these fights get made.
Dude, I'm down. George, thanks so much. That was great, man. And so a couple more questions, man. It sounds like that was an awesome environment. Were there any fights in the crowd?
No, there was no crowd, no fights in the crowd.
All right.
I mean, we, there was the hecklers and that was about it, but there was no fights in the crowd.
Did you smell any yerba mala in the air?
Oh, I had it on me too.
All right. And as far as like the ring card girls, were they popping and were the Mexicans whistling at them? That's what I want to know.
Oh, of course. Come on now, man. You know we were.
That sounds good, man. Well, see, I think we should make it happen, man. I'm always down to see a fight probably once a year, man. I always try to make it happen, and I'm overdue, So it's a blessing for you to be in Arizona because you know what? Arizona gets some hot cards, and we've talked about it, man. I want to give a shout out to Remy, who's in the house, but George, I want to kick it to you, man. Let's get right into the post-fight review, man. So you watched it yourself without any commentary, and I'm kind of glad maybe that your phone turned off because it gives you the ability to be present. You know what I mean? So tell me, bro, like, what'd you think of the fight itself? And who did you have winning this fight?
Okay. And then look, let me just tell you too, being live and seeing all these, all the boxing people that were there, the men and women, you still get distracted because you're watching what they're doing. I mean, I would say I watched most of the fight, but for the most part, I was a little bit distracted. And yes, we know TV makes them look a little bit bigger, but Eddie Hearn really is tall as shit. But when you see him in person, he's kind of scrawny but tall.
Really?
Yeah. But this fight was a good fight, man. And it, yes, they had the big jumbo, or like the screens above them, so you got to see replay. I mean, like in between round stuff. But you didn't get no commentating, so I didn't know what the commentating was like. I didn't know if they were biased towards one person or not. I enjoyed it. And when I went to the Oscar Valdez fight, I didn't get to really watch that one I didn't get to focus too much into that one because I was drinking. This one, I probably had like a few beers and a coffee with Irish cream. So I was trying to be sober as possible. Still want, a little, like my mind a little altered here and there, but good fight, man. Definitely was Estrada's first half of the fight. I did catch some commentating. And what they said is that Chocolatito, kind of took some of the early rounds off. And I would say, yes, if he wins one of the first 2 rounds, at least in my eyes, from what I've seen, we could possibly seen Chocolatito win this or a draw. I know there was one bogus card, right? It was like 117 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was like 117, 111 or something like that.
Yeah, so that one was really bogus. The 115, 113, I feel like really gave you what that fight was like, and it was that close. I'm sure you guys seen it on TV. I seen it in person. It was a really close fight, and when you're there, and if you're a judge, it'd be hard not to let the crowd, make your decision, or like, holy shit, look at the crowd's going crazy, he's throwing punches, but you can't think that way when you're a judge. But us sitting there, you can think that you're like, shit, like if I'm sitting here listening to the crowd, he must be doing something. Because I've always believed that judges shouldn't be ringside, because you don't get to see every angle as you do when you watch it like on TV. But I think that's the perk of being a judge, is you get to sit ringside and watch these fights. But I don't think they had it wrong. I actually, yes, I did have Estrada winning. I thought he won. Even if you take the crowd out of it, I thought he did really good work early on. Chocolatito did turn it on a little bit in the middle. And I would say maybe one of the late rounds, maybe even the 12th round for me in my eyes, I feel like that's what gave Estrada the win.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to D-Style Boxing, who's up in the house, and he says he's got Teo by KO in 3. Well, we'll be talking about that here pretty shortly, man. But Run, I want to know, bro, like, what'd you think about this fight? Now, this fight is pretty hotly contested still. I think the majority seem to think that Estrada won outright. Some people think it was a draw. Some people think Chocolatito got robbed. Just like the other 2 fights, there are some very strong opinions. What did you think about this fight, brother?
I thought it was a good fight. I mean, Estrada started off very well, but even in the early rounds, I noticed Estrada, like, he was boxing really well and landing a lot of combinations, but it was almost sort of like the impending sort of doom of Chocolatito, like when you push him up against the ropes and you get some stuff off, but he wasn't always landing. But it seemed like Estrada, I don't know, he just seemed like he was open to be hit. And then, like, we saw that, I don't whether if he gassed out or whether it was just Chocolatito taking over, but like he made that run towards the middle end of the fight. I didn't score this fight, but I had the feeling Estrada was going to get it, but then again, it was a very close fight. I don't know, with Estrada, he seems like he's very good, but he's very vulnerable at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, he's still there to be hit. He gets off punches, but I don't know. It sort of gave me the feeling like, sort of like when, I know these fighters aren't the same, but like when Abner Mares would fight, like he's very good, or he was very good, but then he still has the ability to be hit. So I don't know, but I'm fine with the decision. It'd be cool to see. I mean, I don't know, that will never happen, but one thing about Chocolatito is that, to me, he did seem like he always would be sort of like not a slower starter, but just very intelligent when he would start off fights. But it seems like that extends longer and longer into the fight for him to actually start going. So I don't know what that is. I don't know who their next fights are going to be. I saw that Bam Rodriguez was in the crowd as well. He's looking very big, looking huge. But
yeah, even in person too.
Yeah, is he just like sort of just like bloated and blown up, or
bloated?
Like,
yeah, he was
stocky.
Yeah, he's pretty bloated. He's got as it is, he's got a pretty big ass head. But like I said, in TV, when you see him in TV, you're like, they look a lot bigger, but in person, they look pretty normal. But he looked pretty bloated.
He's like short, right? He's 5'2", 5'3".
On a good day, 5'3".
On a good day,
5'1".
But yeah, I mean, I would love to see, even though I think he's moving down in a weight class. And man, I mean, if Josh Franco can win that Ioka fight later, I mean, hopefully get a fight with one of these guys. But I don't know. I don't think Bam should move down just yet. Maybe he'll contend in both weight classes, but don't vacate the belts yet, because I think Estrada and Chocolatito are ripe for the picking for him right now.
Well, you know how Bam likes those like guys in their mid-30s. You know what I mean? He's just hovering, waiting. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, dude. Good stuff. Okay, so so you think that Estrada did win the fight then?
I didn't score it, but I was leaning Estrada, like just the general feeling at the end of the fight.
All right, all right. Nopal, is this a clean sweep, man? Did you have Estrada winning this fight? What did you see?
Well, let's say technically I did because he won the 12th round, I believe. But either than that, I mean, I would have been happy with the draw because, to be honest, most of the later rounds, Estrada kind of lost his energy and, he kind of gave those rounds away and he allowed Chocolatito to, gain some momentum. And he did that in almost the championship rounds. So, and to be honest, the first 2 rounds, maybe I thought that they were basically, like swing rounds. Give them to whoever you want because neither guy's doing anything really, especially the first round. So, I'm more comfortable with Estrada taking this because, I look at the big picture as, Estrada did beat the guy that knocked him out, knocked Chocolatito out, and that he never rematched. I mean, right now would probably be a perfect time for Chocolatito to avenge that loss, because I don't think Rubenstein's doing very good right now. So, if you wanted to avenge that loss and, make your legacy look a little better, then, do that. But, by his comments, since the first rematch, the first rematch was fight 2, it took so long to make. And whenever they would ask Chocolatito, Gallo would call him out and say, "Hey, give me a rematch. What's up?" I mean, they've been buddies or whatever, but he was asking for it, and Chocolatito's answer was always, "Well, they got to make sure they pay us a good amount of money," which to me, that sort of answer is telling you that if I'm going to lose to you, they better pay me a whole lot of money. You know what I mean? Make it worth it because I'm not just going to put my status as pound for pound fighter on the line to fight a guy like you and then lose all that just for like 150K, which is absolutely sad to me that these guys make so little, these little guys, because to me, these guys are way more important than fucking Clarissa Shields and all these other ladies that aren't even entertaining. You know what I'm saying? Yet they're over here crying about money, saying that the men make more than them. And I don't think so, bro, because I don't think these guys eat more money than the girl boxers, the high profile ones. And I believe these guys are pretty high profile, even though they're little guys. When it's their turn to fight, people turn out to watch.
Man, it's good stuff. I watched this fight, and when I scored it live, I had it closer to a draw. The way people are talking about this fight to me is pretty interesting. So, when I had my own conclusions, I'll say this, like, this had come off the heels of us rescoring the first fight and the second fight. And the second fight was very fresh in my head. And, everybody's talking about how Chocolatito just didn't look the same. Well, all I can say is like, I felt like Estrada didn't look the same either. I felt like Estrada was showing his dominance at times in that second fight. He was way more active with his punches, sitting on his punches more, while also able to back up, be in range, out of range, so quick. Also able to stand his ground and trade. Very imposing at times, and people called that fight a robbery, but I thought Estrada won. In fact, to be honest, I felt like Estrada won more clearly in the second fight than he did in this particular fight. Like, I don't think he looked as good, and neither did Chocolatito, right? But there's this idea that, like, well, you could tell that, Chocolatito's losing rounds because his coach was angry with him. I'm like, well, that doesn't really tell me anything. First off, I think that they were both kind of taking it slow early on, and just because your coach is yelling at you doesn't mean you're not winning rounds, right? I mean, we could look at that with like the Mayweather versus Pacquiao fight. We could look at that with the just off the top of my head, like the Shannon Briggs versus George Foreman fight. If your fighter's not doing what you want him to do, that doesn't mean he's not making a good account of himself or he doesn't have his own ideas. Teofimo Senior and Junior, they've been on a different page multiple times, right? But he's still winning. So I do think that Estrada did have really good moments. I think that you could easily give him this fight. This fight certainly wasn't a robbery. Although I think that you could score this fight a draw. I think that you could make the argument that Gonzalez did win this fight, but I didn't see it as a robbery necessarily. I thought it was a very exciting fight. I thought this fight kind of looked like maybe like Juan Diaz versus Paulie Malignaggi in the sense that, you got Gonzalez kind of coming forward, maybe more of like the power puncher versus Estrada, who's kind of like on the back foot, connecting a lot, but not necessarily the guy who's like hitting flush or sitting on his punches, or they just seem like a little bit less meaningful. That's just how I saw it. But, I did pick Estrada to win. I did bet money on Estrada and I won. So I am happy he won. But if you do think Chocolatito maybe got this one, I could possibly see that, or a draw, but I don't have any particular issue with the decision. And it was a very, very entertaining fight.
Yeah, very true, man. Very true. Yeah, and he did, you like you said, I think even in this third fight, it was still a good fight, but it wasn't the first in the rematch. I mean, they are a little bit older, but it still was entertaining. You can tell, like in the beginning, yes, Estrada was winning these rounds, but there was still like a little bit of, like, he was still kind of not sure. Like he was fighting a lot more on the back foot. But I think once he kind of got like a rhythm and got comfortable and realized he wasn't going to get hurt, I think he kind of got comfortable in his zone. And then, like Nopal said, yeah, he definitely, I don't know what it was, but he let Chocolatito come in or get his, get momentum back towards the end. And even Nopal and I agreed, I guess the 12th round was kind of like the deciding that gave it for Estrada.
Oh, yeah. I want to give a shout out to Nando Llamas, who's in the house. And he says, fighters of Mexican descent rarely get credit for outboxing their opponents. Juan Manuel Marquez, De La Hoya Trinidad, Canelo versus Triple G1 are other glaring examples. That's pretty interesting, man. All I could say is, like, the difference, Nando, and I'm just telling you what I think, brother. Like, as far as like Marquez, I think he was a guy who really did like sit on his punches, man. That guy would just like, wait for the guy to come in and just throw some chingazos, and I feel like Estrada didn't really do that as much in this particular fight. I saw that more like in the second fight, De La Hoya versus Trinidad. We all classify that one as not necessarily a robbery. So, you take that risk when it's the same dynamic with these guys in all three fights. It's like, what do you like? And it's like that one announcer said in that first fight, do you like the rocket launcher or the machine gun? Right. So it's like, if you're not throwing bombs, but you're kind of like, throwing light punches, not sitting on your punches. Well, you put yourself at risk to potentially lose a fight on the cards. Canelo versus Triple G1. Well, all I can say there, brother, is like, I know who the power puncher was in that first fight, Canelo, and he was also backing up while doing it. So it was very impressive. And that's why I, of course, scored the first fight for Canelo, because, I know what I like in there. You know what I mean? Anybody got anything else on this one before we move to the next topic? Doesn't sound like it. All right. Well, Nando, we're glad that you're here, brother. So you know what? We just want to touch base on Tank Davis real quick. Now, there was a little bit of news. They had their press conference, and, well, it looks like the relationship between Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather is broken apart. We didn't see Floyd Mayweather at the press conference. We didn't see Leonard Ellerbe at the press conference. And Tank Davis says, hey, you know what? I'm on my own now. It's all love. Maybe we could work together again, but I'm on my own now. Georgie, we were talking about this in the group there. Like, what do you think about this new dynamic of Tank kind of being out on his own? And, some people are taking things out of it. Some people are implying that, well, Mayweather was holding him back, or certain circumstances like that need to be analyzed. I want to know what you think about this.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to try to think that that's kind of the case, right? That Floyd was kind of holding him back, and Ellerbe, for whatever reason, if that's the case, if they were really holding him back. I guess for me, like, when I stand back and when I look back at it, or look back at what's going on now, I mean, if you just look at the card, I mean, yeah, not a lot of people are happy with Andrade, but I mean, there's names on this card, and I mean, you have Boots, you have Andrade, you have Rashidi Ellis, you have Tank Davis. I mean, it's a good card. Yeah, man, it's a very impressive card. And for Tank Davis's first without TMT, that right there, I don't know what that, I guess, read between the lines and take it however you want to take that. But for me, that just kind of shows something to me. But at the same time, yes, PBC still is, affiliated, or TMT still is affiliated with PBC. So PBC will still have control of pretty much of Tank Davis's moves, but you definitely won't see Floyd in there. It was kind of annoying to see every time they would have a press conference. I think maybe Tank Davis can get like one sentence off, and then all of a sudden you get Floyd interrupting, saying, he's the greatest fighter, and then he has to throw Canelo's name in there, right? Because then it's not a Floyd interview without mentioning that he's the greatest and he's done this, I've done this better. You know, it's kind of like a dick sizing contest with Floyd Mayweather every time he grabs a microphone. And I'm sure I was tired of the shit. I'm sure you guys were tired of that stuff too. And but I feel happy and I'm excited for Tank Davis. I really hope that from here forward we do get to see the stuff that been wanting to see from him. And you know, he kind of like implemented that, or he kind of like made it seem that's what was going on, is that, you know, he's been asking for these fights and he's not getting them, and that now he can kind of control what he wants with his career, that we're going to get these fights. And he said that. He says he wants to get this guy and that guy. Before, you would hear is like, okay, we're just going to try to get the win and just try to get paid with less damage, minimal. But at the end of the day, he's a fighter. He's been a fighter since he was like a teenager. So I feel like Tank Davis is a born fighter. And I mean, I'm just excited to see what happens, man. I know he has Hector Garcia coming up from 130. And he doesn't look like a 130 to me. He looks like he could actually be a person at 135. And I did hear some stuff, like comparisons between Ryan Garcia and this Luis Garcia. They said, you know, Luis Garcia actually is like an Olympian, you know, qualified. I think he maybe got like a medal or something. And he actually was a champion too. So it'll be a good fight. It'll be a good fight to see where this is at. And I don't think Garcia will be there to get hit. I think he's going to actually try to make this a boxing match.
Hey, man, you know, I do agree with you, and that was great stuff, George. But I think it's kind of funny. It kind of reminds me of like Mario Barrios, where it's like all of a sudden it's like this opponent's picked out of nowhere, and everybody's like, hey, man, this opponent's not as bad as you think. Take a hard look at him. I mean, we're going to beat him, but hey, man, this guy, he's the real deal. And I feel like we're getting that a lot with this Garcia. You know, he's kind of he's coming on the radar for everybody, you know. And Gervonta Davis said this. He says, there's been a lot of talk in the boxing world. I'm not trying to do any more talking. I'm ready to go through everybody that's in my way. I'm ready to go through the entire 135-pound division. Well, brother, all I can say is, Tank, you know, you're the only one who's been doing any talking. There's a undisputed champion at 135 pounds, which means that these dudes have been fighting each other. But was it Floyd's fault? Was it Tank's fault? A little bit of both. Run PMC, what do you think about this news?
I think it's great news. I mean, we were talking in the group that I looked, but I couldn't find the interview. But there was a boxer, I think it was in the Mayweather gym or in the Capitol or what's that? Las Vegas Athletic Club boxing gym where Caleb Plant trains out of. That it was like 2 to 3 years ago, or it was around that time that they said, Tank actually has never been with Mayweather Promotions. Technically, it was just always fight by fight. There was no contract. It was more of just like them. It was a strategy from Heyman to use Floyd to like boost the popularity of Tank. So I don't know if this is much news at all for that. I mean, it is news, but I want to say it was possibly Lionel Thompson that said that in an interview, but I'm not sure on that. I wasn't able to find the video, but I think it's good. I think it's good. This card, when you look at it, it's funny. It's like Tank, Boots Ennis, Andrade, and Rashidi Ellis. It's like all the guys that have had like issues like with activity at points in their career on one card. So it's pretty good with that. When you think about it, it's like Rashidi Ellis, a golden boy, Andrade, Boots Ennis when he was went through his little thing, and then Tank. It's just sort of funny, but I think it'll be a good card. I mean, I don't know how much of a. I mean, I know Garcia is a good fighter. He beat Lil B-Hop, but I don't know how much of a challenge he will be for Tank. But I'm looking forward to watching the card. It does it have a network yet? I don't know if this is on Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime, is it free?
Hell no.
Oh, it's not free.
Nope.
Oh my.
Tank Davis fights are never free these days, brother.
Oh my god! All right, well, I'm excited that the fight's happening, and I'll still watch it. But that's unfortunate. It's on pay-per-view. That's quite ridiculous, actually, when you think about that. Because it's like, come on, like Tank's a good fighter, but come on, like no one's really pay-per-view worthy anymore. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I mean, maybe like Canelo and like if you get like a big heavyweight fight, but nothing should be pay-per-view at this point. It just pay your DAZN subscription or pay whatever your Showtime subscription. Everything should just be on there. There's no reason for pay-per-view anymore.
Oh yeah, great stuff, Run. You know, you're right. You know, I'm gonna watch this fight. You know, in the ways that I do watch Tank Davis fights, but I always enjoy seeing him. I expect a knockout in this fight.
Yeah.
As far as Tank not being with Floyd anymore, like, I feel like we've heard this before. Like before the last fight, he was kind of saying like, oh, you could even see where Floyd has quotes saying, well, I love Tank, nothing lasts forever. I wish him well. So, and then they got back together and they re-signed, but now he's a free agent again.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's kind of weird. I wouldn't be surprised if Floyd Mayweather was just like this, kind of like this lightning rod where everything just kind of goes towards him. He gets all the blame for everything, for Tank not fighting these fights, right? I have my doubts as to whether this is real. I think it could be calculated. And it's like Floyd said, it's currency over legacy, right? And I think it's possible that this could just be a work. It's my opinion. Maybe not, like I could see how Tank could be annoyed with Floyd Mayweather. I mean, he does steal the limelight. Then again, I do think that Tank has benefited from it. I think his profile is higher because of Floyd Mayweather showing up to all these fights, to actively promoting it. I do think that has helped to make him a star. But in my opinion, I'm not really sure about whether it matters or not. Like, I think, especially hearing Calvin Ford, who I'm a big fan of, I really like hearing him speak. And Tank, like, to me, it's like, well, they say, hey, we're focused on Hector Luis Garcia, which is what all fighters say. But, there is another fight on the horizon, Ryan Garcia. And from what I understand, that fight was negotiated between Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy, and Floyd Mayweather, and they kind of had an agreement, and Leonard Ellerbe was co-signing, yes, we're going to fight Ryan Garcia, but now we're not even really hearing about Ryan Garcia at all. And, I don't think anything would keep Tank and Ryan Garcia from actually having this fight move forward with or without Floyd. But I do think it's interesting. Like I said, I do think that this could just be just a little bit of a work to just kind of, have Tank act like he's like this young guy who's evolving into a man, even though he's 28, and there's way more accomplished younger fighters than him in his own division. So I'm skeptical, and it's like, I don't know, man. I'm just really starting to get sick of these opponents of Tanks. Like, I want to see him fight. I don't even want to see him. Well, Ryan Garcia, like, that'd be all right, but I want to see him fight like the top guys, not, middle of the road, part-time boxer, part-time social media guy. Like, I want to see him take on the real fights, because I do think he's extremely talented. And right now, I think he's in his prime, right? And I think he'd go, and I think he could knock out a lot of these dudes potentially. Like, his power is real. I want to see the best fights, and I feel like Tank Davis is allowing himself to be held back. He's running out of excuses, and he's running out of viable opponents. And I think that TMT and PBC are picking up on it, and that's why I think maybe Floyd Mayweather is just going to take some heat, and now Tank can come and say, like, well, I'm going to fight whoever they put in front of me. This is just a bump in the road. Tell these next things that I'm going to do. But it's like, I'm tired of the dangling carrot. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, good point. Very good points.
Yeah, I try not to be jaded. But it just bugs me.
It's hard not to, right, with boxing, just the way shit has been going.
Oh,
Hard
yeah.
not to.
Oh, yeah. So, well, we'll see what happens with these fellas. But I am looking forward to the fight. And this fight is actually coming up pretty quickly here. So we're going to see this fight. We're going to get it out of the way. And like fighters like to say when they're fighting a tune-up, we're going to get this one out of the way. And we'll see what happens next, man. But good luck to Tank Davis. He looks like he's pretty serious. And Calvin Ford, he was talking about the way Tank is performing and the way he's matured. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what Tank's full potential can be. And man, I think he's the perfect size for 135 pounds. If you're going to stick around in that weight class, I think that there are people that are outgrowing in it. It's like, well, who would stick around at 135? I mean, we know that Devin Haney's probably going to move up. And if he does move up, well, I mean, the division's kind of open. But if you think about Tank and Shakur, like those would be like the only two like heir apparent guys, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yep. Are you guys hearing supposedly that the talks with Loma kind of stalled because they're talking about Shakur? I don't know how true that is, but Julian he told me this yesterday, and I'm like, I don't think that's true. I know that there was like the whole shit going on with the sparring video with Haney and Tank, and the Shakur's name got thrown in there, and then Shakur was like, look, I'm not saying Haney should fight me. I'm just saying, later on down the road we'll fight. So I think, because I have heard other channels mentioning that, but then I'm hearing that that's not true, that it is definitely going to be Haney and Loma. I don't know if you guys heard anything on that at all.
Interesting. Well, I did hear Bob Arum say something about a week ago about how that fight, Haney versus Lomachenko, was very close to being made. Like, I don't know what would stall that fight. I think that both parties really want it. I don't think that Haney's in any rush to fight Shakur. And I think Shakur wants all the smoke at 135. So it's in his best interest to get that fight made. And Loma, well, he wants undisputed. So if there was a hiccup, I mean, I don't know what it would be over. I mean, if it was like money or venue or perhaps neither fighter is happy with their purse, right? Like maybe Top Rank just isn't paying these guys enough because, well, the Top Rank fighters don't usually get put on pay-per-view. I don't really know how they feel about their purses, but I do like the fights that are put together by Top Rank.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll know pretty shortly here, and Team Batman Boxing here says that hopefully Tank goes after it quick. He's already saying he doesn't have many years left in the sport, even though a lot of guys say that. Yeah, he's kind of talking that way, and I've picked up on that a little bit too. Like, he could just be overboxing a little bit. Who knows, or maybe he can fade away for a little bit, get that hunger back, right? Or maybe nothing excites him. I mean, if you're fighting all these guys that you can't beat, and he is beating them, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, he could get bored. Nando here says that Shakur versus Haney makes more sense for Top Rank. Haney going to beat Loma and bounce 100. I mean, that's what I think. Want to give a shout out to Black and Brown Boxing, who's in the house, man. Good to see you, brother. And he's been cooking, man. He's been cooking. So if you guys don't know about Black and Brown Boxing, you need to go over there. He's the one guy I see like most eye to eye with as far as like all the channels, man. He's always saying stuff, and I'm like, man, that's how I view things, So great channel over there. Anybody got anything else on Tank before we move on to the next subject?
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, I'm not ignoring Nopal, just so y'all know. He had something come up, so he's gone somewhere to do something, and as soon as he sits back down, we'll go back to him. But you know what? We have some exciting fights this weekend, and I want to start with Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin. Now, we know that Teofimo Lopez has entered the 140-pound division, had one light touch, and now he is doing his second fight at 140 pounds against the conqueror of Mikey Garcia. At least that's how they're framing it. Sandor Martin out of Spain in a 140-pound showdown in New York. They had a stare down, it's starting to get tense, and this fight is already here, and a lot of people actually kind of like this fighting dynamic. Now, just as a little bit of a preview, so you guys know what to expect as far as what the odds makers think. So Teofimo Lopez is a negative 700 favorite. Sandor Martin is a 450 favorite. Now, if memory serves, Sandor Martin was a 10-1 underdog against Mikey Garcia. He upset the apple cart, so he's a little bit less of an underdog in this particular fight, especially if you take Martin. That's probably like he's like half as much, right? So he was like a 10-1 underdog the last time around. And I want to give a shout out to Annalie Jaramillo, who's in the house. She has a feeling that Sandor will win. Well, some people are thinking that stylistically that this could pose some problems to Teofimo Lopez. Georgie, what do you think about this fight? And what do you think about who's going to win?
It's a good fight. I mean, it is a good fight. I heard an interview yesterday with Teofimo, and they were asking him, how he felt about this being like a late replacement or like a week before, 2 weeks. And he says that it's not completely true because they already knew that they were going to fight Sandor Martin. And I don't know. And he said also, I guess, mentioned along the same lines that Pedraza really wasn't like it wasn't COVID related, but there was some kind of illness, and they kind of were already expecting Pedraza not to fight Lopez, so they were already waiting for Martin. So that's why he said it wasn't like a complete surprise. They were already expecting that. I think this is gonna be a good fight. I think Martin will definitely be moving around the ring. He's gonna it's gonna make Teofimo. We're gonna see if Teofimo, how could I say it? So Martin is gonna present a different style, I think, for Teo, and that's because when he fought Lomachenko, has good footwork. He makes you miss. He makes you pay with his counters. Sandor is kind of the same way, but he's gonna move a little bit more. We're gonna see if Teofimo can cut the ring off, or if he's gonna get frustrated against Martin. But on paper, when we think about the two guys that are fighting, we would say yes, Teofimo is gonna knock out Sandor Martin early on. And I honestly don't know what to really expect. I think once the fight actually happens and we're actually seeing like the first couple rounds and seeing what adjustments Teofimo is going to do, like if he's going to cut the ring off the right way, is he going to follow him, is he going to get trapped into counters? Because Martin, he's not going to be afraid to exchange, but he's not going to give Teofimo what he wants. So I think it's going to be a good fight. I mean, on paper, I am picking Teofimo Lopez to win this. I think if he does make the right adjustments and cuts the ring off properly and doesn't get caught in traps, I could see him with some good body work, maybe getting like a late stoppage somewhere between like 8 and 9, maybe between 8 and 10. But it's gonna be a good fight. I think Sandor will win some early rounds. He'll win a couple rounds in this fight. But again, Teofimo should on paper win this fight early in the early on. But I think he's gonna have to work a little bit for this one.
I think I see a knockout too. But if you look at the over/under, it looks like they think this fight's going to go over. The over is 8.5 rounds, -300. And if you pick the under, you get plus 240 on your money, right? So they think this is going to go into round 9 at the very least. But Georgia, I think I see it like you, man. But before I give my breakdown, Run PMC, what do you think about this fight? What do you think about the odds, man? Like, who do you have winning this fight?
I have Teofimo winning by stoppage before 6. I just don't. I think we can't really read into the Mikey Garcia fight that much. I mean, I just don't think Mikey was into it as stated by his brother. And I think Teofimo's he's on the comeback trail. He's gonna come in hungry, and I think he's just gonna take him out. I don't know if it's gonna be a knockout. I'm potentially seeing like a TKO where it's just like a ref stoppage, whether it's on the ropes or just he waves it off. But I don't see it as being a knockout. But I think it's just another stepping stone for Teofimo at 140. Hopefully this leads to a bigger fight. And I would love to see Teofimo versus Regis Prograis. I'd love to see that fight. And I know they have – I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Prograis is going to get the Taylor fight coming up, because did you see the Taylor fight was moved and now it's like a to be determined date to be announced?
Yeah.
Did you guys see that for against Catterall? So
I didn't see that.
So I'm wondering if they're doing that based off of this fight, and I wonder what's going to happen if that fight's going to go down. I mean, I don't know, because I don't know exactly how everything works with the agreements when it comes down to it, but I wonder if they're waiting on this fight to see how they're going to strategize that. Because if Teofimo were to get a cut or something, that's going to move things back. If he's not moving, you could just leave things as is. So, but it'd be quite interesting, and hopefully those three can mix it up. The winner of Taylor, Regis, and then hopefully Teofimo. And then I don't really know who else is at 140. I mean, Tank is that's a 135 fight against Garcia.
Well, yeah, Hector Garcia, yeah. Well, you talking about the fight coming up? Yeah, it's 135 from what I understand.
I'm just trying to think who's at 140 that could be a because if there's 4 of them, then you would like to probably see another one get a fight, and you don't want to have because I could see very easily Regis being the odd man out again. Just be like, because Regis with PBC, and then he's not with PBC. He's sort of flying solo right now. He's with Richard Schaefer, and then you just make Taylor Teofimo easy. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And Remy, there's also Arnold Barbosa as well. Arnold Barbosa's at 140. He's a top ranked fighter.
That'd be a good.
They got some beef.
Okay. Yeah. Wasn't he supposed to fight? Wasn't that the fight that was going to happen that didn't happen?
Yeah.
Right? Barbosa? Yeah.
It was.
That'd be a good one too. Teofimo, Barbosa, Regis, Taylor, and then the winners fight each other. In a perfect world.
I know, right?
Not in boxing, but in a perfect world.
Oh yeah. Well, I think Teofimo is going to put on a clinic here. That's what I think. When I look at this fight, and I understand that Sandor Martin gets on his bike, just like JC is saying that the Spaniards, they like to get on their bike, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but the way I explain this fight is kind of the way I saw Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders. Everybody's saying, well, hey, Billy Joe Saunders, he's a good counter puncher. He's on the move, what's Canelo going to do to get to him? And I said, well, hey, and you saw this with Teofimo versus Lomachenko. All Teofimo has to do, is be ready for Sandor Martin, because Martin has to get his stuff off too, right? And that means if he gets his stuff off too, that he's in range, okay? I think Martin is quick, but I don't think he's super fast. I think that Teofimo Lopez has some speed of his own. And I also think he has some real power. I think he has some real power that potentially could move up and be even better. I do think that he was draining himself a lot to get to 135 pounds. And I think we forget how good of a puncher he can be. I still think he's got a lot of potential towards really shaking up the 140-pound division. And I see Martin eating shots. Now, when you look at the Martin versus Mikey Garcia fight, I'm telling you, man, when you watch that fight, Mikey Garcia is in position to throw a lot, right? And he just, for some reason, he's missing. You guys know I have my theory about that fight in particular, but Martin wasn't necessarily like hard to chase down, in my opinion. Like there was a lot of times where Garcia had Martin up against the ropes, was in range to counter, but was missing. But I think that Teofimo Lopez is a extremely like high level athlete. I also think he's extremely accurate with his punches. Like he knows how to throw bombs. I don't think he'll need to, but I think he's a guy who could take a punch to land a punch. So, throw with Martin. And then, I just see Martin getting clobbered. Like I know, in his, I think I have this photo, but, they did like a stare down in New York. Where's it at? Yeah. And he was sitting there going like, I'm crazy. I'm taking this fight on 3 weeks because I believe in myself. It's like he could talk all that mess, but it's like, dude, Mikey Garcia, he kind of mailed it in or whatever you want to say about it. Like, Teofimo Lopez is there to win, and for Martin to go, oh, Teofimo, you're nervous. I'm chuckling like, no, I don't think Teofimo's nervous at all. I think that to him, this is going to be a little bit more of like an easy touch, in my opinion. So I have Teofimo Lopez by KO, probably around the 9th round. But I think the first few rounds could be a little bit of a stinker. Like I think Martin's going to stink up the joint a little bit. And it's up to Teofimo Lopez to not get impatient, right? It's up to him to be patient, to let the fight come to him, to always be in position to counter. But I don't think you should spend too much time like trying to cut off the ring and just chase him down. Like I think he needs to move with them, kind of like the way Joe Louis does it, right? If we're going throwback, so that's how I feel. Like I feel that this is going to be an early stoppage. So I am going to take a hard look at the under or Teofimo by knockout. And maybe do some parlays. There's actually a lot of fights this weekend. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just do a parlay with him winning, Crawford winning, Xander winning, right? Something like that. So we'll see. Nopal Buxayonis is back. Nopal, we were just talking about Teofimo Lopez versus your favorite, Sandor Martin, the Spaniard, right? What do you think about this fight, brother?
Man, I don't know, bro. I got a feeling that Sandor's going to go in there and stink up the joint. And, this might go exactly like Rigondeaux versus Casimero, where, it's just going to go that way, I think, man. Because the dude, I know, and this is what gets me about these face-offs. We already know the dude doesn't want to fight toe-to-toe, so why are you acting like, like you're this crazy dude that's willing to go out on the shield or willing to, try to knock somebody out. Bro, you're not built for that type of stuff. But I guess he's trying to sell the fight, and we'll see what happens. But that's my fear, is that he's going to try to stink up the joint. And, as soon as Teofimo gets close, he's going to clinch him. Referee's going to separate it. He's going to – and, it kind of will come down to how big the ring is too, What if it's a big-ass ring? What gives them a lot of room to run around. So, I think it's just going to be a stinky fight, and I don't think that that Teofimo has fought that type of fight, has he? Where he has to chase down the guy and then, all those little tricks and then get away again. And, I don't think he's fought that type of fight. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, that's a great observation. The only fight that comes to mind is I think that Loma's really good at kind of, not necessarily, I don't think he's necessarily like a great back foot fighter, but he's good at getting out of range and resetting. And Teofimo was very good in that fight of letting the fight come to him. He was very patient. I think he needs to exercise that patience again with somebody like Sandor Martin.
Yeah, I just don't know if, how Loma was going back and forth, coming at him, going backwards. He was doing a lot of movement like that, not necessarily at where Teofimo was just waiting for him to come back. And you know what I mean? Because he was in and out. So he didn't have to chase Loma down necessarily. But what's going to happen with the guy that's going to be his whole game plan is to try to jab and not get hit, and stay out of range the whole time. I don't think Loma necessarily did that, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah. The other thing about Martin is like, he kind of bugs me a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm glad he beat Mikey Garcia, but this guy's talking mess like in this little face-off here. He's like, what, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And Teofimo was like, no, I'm not nervous. It's like, why would he be nervous to fight you, bro? Like, he already fought Lomachenko, right? And Lomachenko was a huge favorite, and Lomachenko was Lomachenko back then, a big deal, right? Sandor Martin, he got lucky, got a win, but I don't think he's also going to be able to get into Teofimo's head. Like, if anybody was able to get into Teofimo's head, it was Kambosos. Teofimo, his wife had just left him, right? And you could tell that Kambosos was dropping these little nuggets like, oh, everybody's left you, right? It's like, man, he was, Teofimo was in a really bad state back then. Like in this fight, like I don't think a few words of Spanish is going to get to Teofimo. And Teofimo actually, he just did an interview with No Puedes Jugar Boxeo, and his Spanish is very good. So some people are under the impression that he didn't understand Sandor Martin. I think you haven't been listening to Teofimo enough. Like his Spanish is decent for sure. He understood what was going on in this little conversation. I just don't think it makes a difference. Like, I don't think anything that Sandor Martin says is going to rile up Teofimo. And then Remy here has Teo by decision. And then Nando says, I think Teofimo is looking to show out. I want to see if he fights patiently or reverse that over-aggressive style he had versus Kambosos. And then Remy here goes, I can't go back to betting Chicano, but maybe 50 parlays. I don't bet anymore. Yeah, well, there's a lot of one-sided fights, right? So I'm trying not to go too crazy on my parlays because, there's been some times where I've thought about betting on like some guy I really didn't know, but, he had like plus 10,000. I'm like, well, let me just add this guy to the parlay. Let me get a few more nickels out of my bet. And sometimes there'll be a crazy upset. So I only bet on fights that I'm aware of, So, yeah, I'm not going to go too parlay crazy. But does anybody have any final thoughts on this fight? All right, man. Well, I'm looking forward to this one, man. And you know what? It kind of snuck up on me, but bro, there's a nice little undercard going on here, dude. So Xander Zayas is fighting. I didn't even really know that he was fighting this weekend. Pumped to see him again. I don't really know about his opponent. We got Keyshawn Davis on the card and Jared Anderson, who I like seeing. I want to know more about Jared Anderson for sure. I was on the phone with Drew Evo from the Shoe Shine, and we were just talking about how, like, but we like what we see, but, we haven't really seen him be tested or really be tested into the deep waters, right? So his talent remains to be seen. I hope he has some good opposition this weekend. I hope Xander has good opposition this weekend, as well as Keyshawn Davis. Like, I don't know anything about any of the opponents. I really didn't do my research. I'm sure they're all probably one-sided fights.
Yeah, they're all prospects, right? I mean, I'm familiar with all of them, but I just don't know their opponents. And I mean, it just goes to show what Top Rank does, right? I mean, I think they have the best young prospect talent out of any promotion right now. Everybody all the guys want to start there with their career, but in somewhere else. But I'm excited for that card too. I heard it yesterday when with the Teofimo's interview. I was like, holy shit, it's a pretty well-known name, pretty well-known names on that card.
I'm very impressed with the undercard, especially that it's for free. And they're all up and comers, right? I mean, that's kind of different than like, Tank does have some up and comers, right? But he's got Andrade, and he's not really an up and comer. So we'll see what happens, man. But I'm very excited about that particular card. So I'm looking forward to enjoying that one. And then at the same time, and and hopefully we can stagger things. Terrence Bud Crawford is fighting in Omaha, Nebraska against Avanesyan. We got this fight coming up, man. And, well, I'm looking forward to this one, too. It's always great to see Terrence Crawford, who is an all-time great fighter, or at least one of the best fighters of this generation, who's been taking care of business for so long. Now, we all know the history here. He couldn't make the fight with Spence, and he wanted to get a fight in before the end of the year. This app called BLK Prime came and threw some serious money at Crawford. Crawford made the offer to Avanesyan, who said yes right away. He's a top 10 welterweight contender, and now this fight is set. I don't even think these guys have faced each other, to be honest. Like, I haven't seen any photos where they've faced each other, but this fight's about to go down in Omaha, Nebraska. Georgie, what's your prediction? What do you think about this fight?
It's not the fight we want. I mean, this kind of snuck up on me as well. I didn't realize it was already this weekend. For some reason, I thought it was like in a couple weeks. I didn't see too much promotion, so I don't know if that's a good sign for a new app for like BLK to come out. Really, I mean, if you want to try to make money, right, it's all about promo. We didn't really see too much of it other than the back and forth between who's Team Crawford, Team Spence. That's pretty much the only thing we really seen as far as what's going on with Crawford, and then people really not knowing Avanesyan too much or too familiar. We just know maybe like one or two fights, or he was mentioned in a Virgil Ortiz fight. But Crawford should win this one. He's back at home, and I mean, I have really not much to say. I mean, I think it's gonna be a typical Crawford fight. Avanesyan It's pretty decent. Yeah, he's ranked in the top 10, but I don't think anything that will threaten Crawford or make Crawford look bad in this win. I think Crawford this is a good showing for Crawford with a top 10 name under his belt. I think this probably won't go 12.
All right. Run PMC. How do you see it, brother?
Crawford easy. I mean, David Avanesyan had the great win and over the pond, but I just don't really think he's. I mean, everyone's a quality fighter when you're up with it in the rankings, but I just think Crawford should have his way with him. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what he does if he carries him a little, or if he'll just finish him early and try and make a statement. But I have Crawford by stoppage. I don't think it will be much of a test for him. I'm just more interested to see what he's going to do next in his career because he's on the BLK Prime, and we're going to see how that goes. We'll see if that's if he's just doing a one-off or if he has that deal like Broner has, like a 3-fight deal. So we'll see. But it's all just frustrating when I talk about the welterweight division. It's all just frustrating. Like I didn't want to mention Spence Crawford. It's just, what are you gonna do? You know, it's like you might as well fight. If you fight this week, if he fights, Drawn Ennis fights, just make that fight happen then. Drawn Ennis isn't. Is he specifically tied to PBC? Is he tied to PBC now? Or is he still just Cameron Duncan and they're using PBC?
I mean, that's a good question. I'm not positive on if he's tied up like that or not.
Yeah.
I'm hoping not.
Yeah, they should make it happen. I mean, Bradley didn't want to fight Crawford. Bradley was with Cameron Duncan. Crawford was with Cameron Duncan. Doesn't seem like the Ennis fight's going to happen. So it's sort of like Cameron Duncan's going from Bradley, Crawford, Ennis, and none of the predecessors want to fight each other. So make this one happen. That'd be a good. I mean, I don't know if that's much of a storyline connecting it to a manager, but I think that would be a good, decent storyline for whoever DAZN or whoever to take on, so they could steal it.
All right. And just so y'all know, Terrence Crawford is a healthy favorite, right? And these odds are wider than the Teofimo versus Sandor Martin odds. Terrence Crawford is a negative 1,500 favorite, which means you have to bet $15 to win $1. And if you bet on David Avanesyan at plus 800, you'll get $8 for every dollar you bet. So if you like an upset, I mean, you'd be getting some good ass money on that one. Although, I mean, I don't see how David Avanesyan can win. Like, I don't see him having a prayer of knocking out Terrence Crawford. So if you were going to take Avanesyan, you'd have to take him by decision. And I mean, do you think he's going to get a decision against Crawford? I don't think so. But that's just me. You know, I do think that Terrence Crawford is on the slide. That's just how I feel. I mean, it's natural when you get up to 35 years old and you're at the welterweight division, like you're not getting any younger. His legs haven't been tested like that, but I don't think it's going to be a problem for him in this particular fight. As far as the over-under goes, it's at 7.5. So, you know, you're getting a little bit less money on your dollar, whether you go with the over or the under. So the odds makers aren't really sure if this is going to go over or under. So they're kind of leaving it up to you, right? While not giving you great odds. I think that's pretty interesting. Nando here wants to know if we're going to see Bud versus Broner next. Lord, I hope not. You know, here's my thing. Terrence Crawford will have no fight to do after this fight. After this weekend, he'll be free. And if he's free, I think he should start talking to Spence again. Like, why not make that fight early next year? Might as well make it happen. If Spence doesn't have an opponent tied up, dude, let's get that Spence versus Crawford fight going. You know what I mean? That's how I feel. But before we maybe even talk about that, Nopal Boxeones, I want to know what you think, man. Like, what do you think about this fight? Who do you have winning? Oh, well, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure Nopal has Terrence Crawford winning this fight. I mean, I don't think anybody has David Avanesyan winning this fight. One thing that I did think is interesting is my dad, he lives in Nebraska, and he was telling me, right, because I was talking to him about this fight, and I said, hey, you know, you should order the pay-per-view. And he told me, and I have to confirm this, you know, he's an older guy, so I got to check on this, but he was telling me that they have like a blackout in his area and they're not allowing, and this is Dish Network I'm talking about, not allowing anybody to buy the pay-per-view in the area. Like, I'm not sure if that's true. And if it is true, maybe they're doing it just like, you know, with NFL games, you know, you black out the television, right, from people being able to see it on the TV so that they go to see it in person. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, to me, I heard this was a near sellout already, but I know that there are still seats available. So I'm not sure if they're trying to get people in person to go check it out. But I'm going to get some more detail on that. I've not heard of blackouts for boxing matches. I thought that was pretty interesting, you know, but my dad said he's already looked into it, and it looks like, at least with Dish, that he's unable to order this fight, but maybe things could change there. I thought that was pretty interesting, though.
Yeah, I thought blackouts only occurred if, like, one, if there wasn't a sellout, and two, if it was on, like, quote unquote what free TV would be for your local
Mm.
teams. And it's sort of weird that you'd have a blackout on something that's a pay-per-view style. That's very odd.
That's what I'm saying, man. So, I'm going to look into it. Like I said, my dad's older, but he's never had trouble ordering pay-per-view. And from what I understand, BLK Prime is allowing people to just order this fight on regular pay-per-view. You don't necessarily have to have the app. So I'm going to look into it. I know that Dish is going to be providing this fight. I looked into it, so I'm going to get some further information, maybe follow up on Twitter or something like that. Remy has Crawford by 6th round KO. And yeah, Remy here says it makes sense, man. Well, good luck to Terrence Crawford, man. He's one of my favorite fighters. I look forward to seeing him, and it's getting weird. Like when I got into boxing, I was maybe like in my mid-20s or something like that, back into boxing, right after like being into it when I was a kid, kind of watching boxing with my parents and the fight parties and all that. And then I kind of got back into it, but I've been watching Terrence Crawford for years and years, and it's nice to see him still around, but it's weird to see like the fighters that I kind of grew up with, like finish up their careers, kind of retire, go on that slide, like I saw the Ascension. Well, I kind of caught Pacquiao like right when he beat Morales, Barrera. So I didn't really see his ascension, but I did see Terrence Crawford's ascension, and I saw Canelo's ascension, and well, they're starting to get into their mid-30s a little bit. So it's interesting to watch a full career, and it's interesting to see them on the downslide. I don't like burying somebody before they're dead, but it's very interesting, like I know for sure that Crawford is no longer in his prime, but that's just me, that's just how I feel. The shoe shine Dave from the 408 is here, man. He goes, saludos, fellas, at work listening. Nice fights this weekend for sure. He's rooting for Lopez to win the 26-pound title, and Shannon takes the Bridges title. Okay. So we're talking about a lower weight class, and then also Shannon is taking on Ebony Bridges. That's right. I didn't really think to cover that fight in particular. Does anybody have any thoughts on what the shoe shine is talking about here?
I completely forgot that they were in fighting this weekend. Because like when I think of the female division, I think of like Sinisa Estrada, Michaela Mayer, Alicia Baumgardner, like those ones. But I guess because I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad. I just think those girls have. I just think those girls have had a bigger. They put in more into it throughout their career to get to where they've gotten to. It seems like, even whether it's amateur or not, than Ebony Bridges. So that's why I think if I am going to watch the women's fights, I'm going to watch those girls. Oh, and what's her name? What's the one from? She has the sister. I can't believe I forgot.
Oh yeah. Serrano.
Yeah,
exactly.
Amanda Serrano.
She has the sister. Yeah, it's funny. I knew what you were talking about too, but.
I actually like Serrano, so that's bad.
Yeah.
Excuse me for that.
It's okay, man. We all forget names.
JC here says Bridges Mamacita. Well, one thing that I thought was interesting. Okay, so I went home for the holidays, and I forget which card I was watching, but I was watching a card with my mom, and there was two women fighting, right? And this fight between Ebony Bridges and the other chick, right? Like, it's kind of heated, right? I mean, they're talking some serious shit back and forth. And my mom, while watching this fight between two women, she says that she doesn't like watching women's boxing, right? And you could not like women's boxing for a lot of reasons, but she said that one of the things that she noticed is like when she's watching two women fight, like they have like a meanness to them. Like they really want to beat each other up. Like they just, for some reason it gets real personal and they're ready to like throw down, like kind of like be scrappers, And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? She's right. Like women, they seem to have like a lot of beef and like, they can't seem to knock each other out, but there's like a meanness to them when they're fighting. Like I don't really see any like too much like clinical fighting with them, and it's like I thought that was interesting, so it was an interesting observation. I'm gonna have to look a little bit more into that, and if that is the case, it would make me more interested in watching their fights because it's a beef. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want to know what my mom said, bro. She said that while they get together and challenge each other of cooking, it was like rolling, bro. Because my mom likes she likes to watch the big fights, but men's fights, you know what I mean? They're just more entertaining. But a Serrano fight with Katie Taylor, and she kind of like got bored. So crazy that she's like,
Yeah, man. No, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I guess I will watch it. I don't mind a full. Is that fight? Where's that fight? Does anybody know where the Bridges fight is gonna be held? That's overseas, right? I think it is, right? So I mean, the Warrington fight and Ebony Bridges. I guess it's gonna be overseas. So we're gonna have another full day of fighting, and I kind of like that. I usually work on Saturdays, but it's nice to have my little app and to be able to watch some fights and just kill some time. And Lee Jeremilo here says that she just hopes that 3-minute rounds become mandatory. You know what? Same here. Same here. It's like I start getting settled for the fight, and then all of a sudden, like the round's over quick. It's only a 10-rounder, but I think I'm slowly getting used to it, but I would like to see more rounds, And then Nando here says that's true as far as like, women having like this meanness and wanting to scrap, and it's like he says that's true in real life too. Got to keep them ladies separated, Well, I hear you, man. Well, the thing is, like, once they hold on to the hair, it's hard to separate them. That's the main thing. Yep, you got to listen to, or you got to watch the Zone for the ladies fight. Anybody have any final thoughts on the fights this weekend before we go to our next segment? No? Well, we hope you guys all enjoy it. Run, PMC, man. We're about to do our Fight of the Year segment. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch the fight, or if you didn't, if you'd like to stay on. What's going on with you, brother? Oh, looks like you need to hop off right now.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, I wasn't able to watch it, but as always, thanks for having me. I'll try to come on more. It's just been hectic at work, but I do appreciate it.
We understand, and we also appreciate it. Everybody that's Run PMC, he's the hired gun of our show, has a lot of great knowledge, and we're always happy we can come and kick it and talk boxing with us. But man, right now we're going to get into the Fight of the Year 1941. Now, we rate these fights for entertainment purposes to see if it's worth your time. Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion, the reigning heavyweight champion, on a historic win streak, on a historic KO streak, is facing the Irishman, right? Billy Conn, a 175-pounder, okay? Now, I'm just going to go off camera so I can read some of my notes here, but this fight took place in 1941, and this was a highly anticipated fight, and, for the first time in a while, it looks like Joe Louis was still the favorite, right? But the odds were slightly closer. It looks here like Louis was a better than 3-1 favorite, and this is his 18th title defense. Now, as I said, Billy Conn, he's a fighting Irishman, moved up from a middleweight to light heavyweight, and then after 3 defenses, aimed for Joe Louis because he wanted to be the heavyweight champion, okay? Now, he moved up, okay, and there was a 32-pound weight disadvantage in this fight. Joe Louis weighed 201 pounds, while Billy Conn weighed 169 pounds, but they lied to the media. They manipulated the scales and said that Louis was 199 pounds and that Billy Conn was actually 174 pounds, right? So they kind of made that 32-pound weight disadvantage not seem as bad, if you can believe that. It's crazy what they could get away with back in the day, But yeah, dude, it looks like it was a pretty interesting fight, and a lot of people were really interested in this one. And Billy Conn is from Pittsburgh, and apparently back in the day, that was a really big fight town. A lot of people thought he was kind of like this well-spoken, good-looking guy, and a lot of people wanted him to go in there and beat Joe Louis. And this was a fight that was actually quite exciting. Joe Louis had a bit of a scare. Billy Conn came on, and, well, he kind of rattled Joe Louis, but Joe Louis came back the next round and then knocked out Billy Conn to keep his KO streak going. And that's how the fight ended. And they wanted to possibly fight again. Billy Conn said, well, I came out a little bit too aggressive after I rattled him. I should have taken my time. I'm going to get him the next time. But the next time was much later as World War II happened. And both these guys enlisted into the United States military. But we're going to get into that here in a little bit. But let's talk about the fight itself. Joe Louis versus Billy Conn. We had a chance to take a look at this film. Georgie, what'd you think about this fight? And how do you rate it?
Yeah. Well, we kind of know how Joe Louis's career kind of went, towards the end. I just wanted to mention something really quick. Just a little research that I've done. I know, well, one thing that really stood out to me a lot about Joe Louis is like he has a couple famous quotes, but I feel like one that was one of his greatest quotes, and it says, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." I think it's pretty good. And yes, he went, to the war. I mean, he was, he had like a little bit of a hiccup, he served in the war, and then like how it ended, you know, how his career ended, how he was a greeter at the Caesar's Palace. And I also read that he wasn't the only like celebrity athlete that did this. Like Joe DiMaggio was another one of those guys that did the same thing. What Joe Louis did. That's kind of like how his career ended. There was as a greeter, you know, he ended up passing away, I believe, at the age of 81 or 61, and 81. But you know, back to the fight. It was a good fight, man. I did read that. I read it was 25 pounds. I didn't know it was actually 39. And this kind of went, you know, the Joe Louis typical where, you know, he's the prey. I mean, he's the predator where he kind of like hunts you down and waits on what your moves are going to be. He's a good counter puncher, good jab. His jab comes at all speeds. He uses angles really well, and he did that here in this fight against Billy Conn. And I watched this fight all the way through. First half of the fight, it's kind of what you expected from Joe Louis. And for me, I would say probably about like the 6th round, maybe even the 7th round. Okay, right before that round started, I would say about like the 5th, going into the 6th, I was thinking that this fight was going to end a little bit sooner, but Conn, I guess, was, you know, like you said, he took his time a little bit. You know, it seemed like he took his time a little bit, and then he started to win like these later rounds. And that was pretty impressive, especially for you know, it being Joe Louis, a good finisher. And it just shows how strong, how tough how Billy Conn was in this fight. He even had Joe Louis hurt, like you said, in the 12th round, and then the very next round, I think Louis probably felt the pressure and you know, came out and was throwing the harder shots, and he got him out of there. And we were saying this off camera, and I think we even said it like in the last fight of the years that we've gone through, that they don't fit like the criteria of the fight of the year that we're used to seeing, where it's, you know, it's back and forth. Fight of the year, you have other fights that are on nominees, and one is picked. And we said that we think that these fights are called fight of the year because it probably was the biggest fight at the time, and this one being in 1941. But this one almost fit the criteria of what we're used to seeing as a fight of the year, where, you know, there's a little bit of back and forth, moments from both guys, and it may not be the typical fight of the year that we're used to seeing, but I feel like this fit more of the narrative of fight of the year. It was a good fight. I'm not saying it was the best fight or one of the greatest fights, but it was a pretty good fight. It was pretty entertaining, especially once Conn was able to get his shots off and get Joe Louis hurt, and you saw Louis make his adjustment, like you said. If I was to grade this one, I guess through 1 through 10, I would give this one like a solid 7.
A solid 7, yeah, man. You know what? This one lived up to fight of the year for sure, man, and it was a very exciting fight to watch. And Georgie, it looks like they got to you, man, and you thought it was a 25-pound weight difference, but you know, it was actually much wider, you know. So I guess that kind of stuff works, you know, when they put stuff out there, you know. Pretty interesting that they could get away with that kind of stuff, you know, but it was a different time. You know,
hey,
it was a different time.
Chicano, so what was the weight exactly? Because yes, they were talking about it, and I had even caught that they said that, you know, there was a rehydration clause on this fight where Louis couldn't weigh more than 200. So what was it exactly? What happened there?
Interesting. So I don't know about the rehydration clause, but officially, and this is like when I mean officially, I mean like, you know, according to what they're telling the press, it was 199 to 174 pounds, right, which was 25 pounds, but it was actually a 32-pound weight disadvantage because Joe Louis, and you know, they say that they did that right to make the fight a little bit more marketable, to make it seem like Conn had a little bit of a better shot, because they thought that people would think that the weight difference would be way too wide if it was over 30 pounds. So the actual weights, at least according to some sources, right, and these were documentaries, was 201 pounds to 169 pounds, which was a 32-pound weight disadvantage.
No freaking way. Billy Conn weighed in at 169.
Oh yeah, that's according to the information, you know. So I do think that's pretty interesting.
Damn.
I know, right? I'm telling you, dude. So Nopal, what'd you think about this fight, man? Did you enjoy it?
You know what I enjoyed about it, man? Just the whole storyline and all that. You know, fucking great. Guy goes in there. He takes a huge risk. And this isn't like your typical going up to heavyweight, and especially with the information you just unloaded on us, bro. It's like this was basically a freaking super middleweight, or even middleweight, because that's around what Triple G was weighing in at 169 versus a heavyweight, basically. You know what I mean, or a light heavyweight.
Right, and that's a fully hydrated, because they didn't have same day weigh-ins or anything. Yeah, exactly, right. So it's like it's not like he cut to he was like literally just walking onto the scale 169 pounds. Isn't that crazy to fight for the heavyweight championship?
And kind of like the broadcast that I saw, I get the idea that it wasn't the one that was happening in that time period. I think that it was guys just rewatching the fight, because it was a British dude talking, and he was even talking about, you get a sense that because he wasn't able to weigh in at his normal weight, that he could be weakened right now. They were talking about Joe Louis around the rounds when Billy Conn started coming on. You know what I mean? Because he made that fight pretty exciting. The beginning, I was like, damn, this guy's got some pretty good footwork, and it's not the typical, but whatever, especially for the 20s. But, he was on the back foot doing his thing, and I guess he was trying to see, wait for his opportunity to come in. Then, the fight levels off, and here we go back and forth, and Billy Conn was doing good. And then I did not expect that, man, for him to get knocked out like that. And, you get the sense that if Joe Louis wouldn't have got that KO, they would have probably gave it to Billy Conn, because everybody likes to see the small man get in there and, do his thing in those type of circumstances, is what I've said sometimes, is like when you see such a disadvantage, it's almost like the whole rules of the fight change. I know there's points and all that, but sometimes you got to give the smaller man a little bit of more credit, because he is in there putting his life in danger more than the bigger guy. And, 40-pound disadvantage or 30 pounds?
32 pounds.
And he goes in there, like I said, like today's modern era middleweight, 160 pounds, rehydrating to 170. You got to give him credit for having the balls to do something like that. You know what I'm saying? And, if it would have been close, I would say give it to Billy Conn. But in this case, he gets knocked out. So what a great story. I'm looking forward to. I see that there's a fight too, and I'd be looking forward to looking at the second fight.
All right. And how many stars do you give it, Nopal?
I'm going to give it eight stars.
All right. So 7 stars from Georgie, right, Georgie?
Yes.
And then 8 stars from Nopal. And you know what? I enjoyed this fight too. And you guys both made some great observations. And you know what? The crowd was way into Billy Conn. That was one of the observations I saw, man. Like, on top of that too, yes, great foot movement. I think Joe Louis was establishing an excellent jab and also some really good body punching from Joe Louis. And I felt like Conn's good footwork was just one of the things that he did well. Although Louis seemed physically dominant to me, I felt like Conn put some nice punches together and landed some really good bombs. I think that you could easily give him rounds throughout this fight. I think between 7 and 10, rounds 7 and 10, I thought this fight was pretty even, man. I was really enjoying the back and forth, but then I thought Conn started to come on, and I think that he took the 11th, and then we all know what happened in the 12th, where he rattled Joe Louis, and then he came out afterwards, and, Billy Conn said, well, when I fight him this next time, I'm going to be more patient. And, I got caught because I rushed him. It seemed to me like when I watched that fight, I didn't necessarily see Conn rush Joe Louis. I felt like it was just a natural flow. I actually thought Conn came out pretty patient after having rattled Joe Louis. I'm sure he respected Joe Louis's power. But I felt like, once Louis was wobbled, he was able to compose himself. And one of the things that's so interesting about watching some of these old fights is, and some of these fighters don't even always get that 10 count back in the day, right? They just kind of get up and the fight starts immediately. And they're able to compose themselves very quickly. It's impressive to see that. It's fun to watch those old fights and watch these people just kind of, get right back up or just kind of get going like right after they get knocked down, So very impressive. I would also give this fight 7 stars. What I really liked about this fight in particular is I was always curious as to what it would be like if Joe Louis was to fight a mover. Now, I've always had in my mind, since we've been doing this, a fantasy fight of Joe Louis versus Gene Tunney. And I've asked myself, and I'm so impressed with Gene Tunney, right? Even though I've only seen a couple of his fights, right? But I asked myself, well, how would Joe Louis do against that style, against somebody who could move? And it's like, well, we got a better idea of it based on this fight. Now, Billy Conn isn't nearly as big, isn't nearly as heavy, right? And can't punch as hard as a big man like Gene Tunney. But, he made a really good account of himself. So it makes me think that, if Joe Louis and Gene Tunney were to fight, like, I think I probably would still favor Gene Tunney based on what I saw. I feel like Billy Conn did make a good account of himself. And as a reference, we were supposed to see a rematch a year later, okay? A year later between these two. And you could tell here that they were good friends throughout the rest of their lives, okay? Just like Joe Louis was with Max Schmeling. Like I said, man, it seems like it was an old fraternity back in the day, all right? But, well, Billy Conn got into a fist fight with his father-in-law, so they couldn't have a rematch because he broke his hand in 1942. And then there was a call to service because things were getting really hot with World War II. The United States entered, and, well, they both enlisted, right? They both enlisted, but you could see them being friends up until they passed. They would get together quite often and hang out with each other. But yes, we have Private Joe Louis who says we're going to do our part and we'll win because we're on God's side. Now, a lot of people wanted Joe Louis to kind of be anti-government because, and it's true, that the black people were not treated as well back in the day, obviously, and we all know that. But Joe Louis was quoted as saying, like, no, I love this country. Like, there's no other place in the world where I can make this type of money and become a heavyweight champion. Like, I love this country no matter what anybody says. So he enlisted, right? And he came in as a private. He was a private, but he became more of a goodwill ambassador. They did not put him on the front lines. They would take him around to talk to the people and to do a lot of exhibitions. So he would draw massive crowds wherever he went. And this is like the baddest man on the planet. And if you guys just don't know, like, dude, back in the day, the heavyweight champion was one of the most famous men on the planet at all times. So it'd be like a superstar just kind of amongst you. So he would go, he would give talks, and he would also have this team that he would go around and do exhibition fights with. Now, only with black fighters, but he would go and entertain a lot of people. So apparently he did a lot of good work, and he was just cherished everywhere he went. So really moving to see that he would do that. Pretty cool to see Joe Louis go overseas and just give his time to his country. His prime years, right? Some of his prime years while he's in the middle of a heavyweight reign, a historic heavyweight reign, to do what's most important, right? Because everybody was caught up in World War II at the time. And then also in regards to the Billy Conn fight, there's another quote that came out of this that's world famous, right? And Georgie and I didn't have a chance to reference it earlier, but Conn kept talking about how he was going to move around on Joe Louis, and the famous quote came out: "You can run, but you can't hide." Right? And that's in reference to this fight. So when you hear that quote, it sounds to me, based on what I was reading, that it comes from this particular fight, right? So pretty interesting. And they did have a rematch in 46, but a lot of people think that and this was Billy Conn's first fight back or some shit like that, right? So he was not seasoned at all. On top of that, Joe Louis was on the slide, and it did end in a knockout. Joe Louis knocked out Billy Conn again, but a lot of people were saying that the fight itself wasn't the greatest. But, Joe Louis went and he did his part. And so now we're just going to talk about Joe Louis towards the end of his career. So we want to give a shout out to Joe Louis versus Billy Conn. I would give that fight 7 stars, but, I want to say that Joe Louis entered the rank of staff sergeant before his discharge in 45, right? So, I mean, he was there for a while, man, doing his thing, dude. Props to him, and like Georgie said, towards the end of his career, he fizzled out. I think he only had 3 losses. Yeah, so he went 66-3-0. He came out of retirement and fought Rocky Marciano, and he lost. But he fought from 34 to 51 for 17 years, 66-3-0 with 52 KOs, right? But he did end up kind of being a little bit broke towards the end of his career, and Caesar's Palace hired him on to be a meet and greet type guy. He said he quite liked it. He would go and meet high-profile clients. Also, he would go and spend house money at the tables when things were kind of slow, and he seemed to be pretty comfortable with it. And I liken this to, like, it'd be like Julio Cesar Chavez in like 5 years from now being a gritter, like at a casino. Like, I mean, and that's not, and Chavez, he's super famous, but he's not even close as famous as Joe Louis was at the time. A lot of people really admired him, and you could see him here with Diana Ross. I mean, Muhammad Ali said that Joe Louis was the greatest, right? Or, so I'm telling you, like, Joe Louis was really the man, had a whole lot of respect. And I'm glad that we got a chance to learn about him because, sometimes unless you take the opportunity to learn about these fighters, like, you could just really not even learn about it and not know how much great history there is and how many former great champions there were, and what they were able to do with the time that they had while fighting, right? So I want to give a shout out to Joe Louis. This will be the last time that we see Joe Louis. Does anybody have any final thoughts? We've seen about 5 of his fights. Anybody got any final thoughts on Joe Louis?
No, none.
All right, man. Well, we want to give him a shout out, dude. He is a historic fighter, man, and it was a real pleasure getting to know him. And man, what power. Salute to the great Joe Louis. Now, as I mentioned, in World War II, there wasn't much going around, dude, as far as like film goes and just attractions, because everybody was so caught up in the war. So there were fight of the years in between that fight, right, and the fight that we're going to see here. But I'm telling you, like in the mid 40s, there just wasn't much film on any of the fights of the year. So, and I'm a little upset because it looked like there were some good ones, man. It's like it looks like Bo Jack versus Bob Montgomery 2 and 3, 43 and 44. It looks like those were rockers. Rocky Graziano looks like he had some great fights. So we're not going to be able to see them. So we're going all the way to 1948. This will be a middleweight fight that we're going to see. Tony Zale versus Marcel Cerdan, middleweight. And this should be a good one. So this will be the next one that we see. So yeah, man, that's what's going on with us, dude. We hope you guys take a look at that fight so you can talk about it with us the next time we come on and discuss the fights of the year. Let's see here. It's Joe Louis versus Conn was in my library. Nice, Remy. Nice. You know what? I think I did see it in your library, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, dude. The Brown Bomber. Salute. Well, this is the Chile Crew, man. We hope you all have a great week, and we'll touch base with you next week with our post-fight thoughts, as well as the fight of the year for next year. So you all take care. Peace.